Britain has a long history of inventing brilliant new technologies, processes and designs. But how do we make sure these innovations translate into money-making products, companies and industries? What is needed in today's turbulent economic climate to turn British startups into world beaters? Entrepreneurial spirit is high. At the beginning of 2012, 4.8 million startups were operating in the UK, an increase of over 200,000 firms on the previous year. Securing funding is a real challenge. In a recent survey, more than 6 out of 10 small businesses said lack of startup capital was the barrier they found hardest to overcome. So, what next? In the USA, there has been a surge in crowdfunding. The website Kickstarter has raised more than $660 million for 43,000 product offerings, and over 4 million people have contributed money. In the UK, Exeter-based Crowdcube has 37,000 registered investors and has raised over £9 million. Venture capital is also important. For inspiration, British policymakers could look to Israel, which attracts more than twice as much venture capital per capita than any other country, at $170 per person. With this model, Israel has established a world-leading high-tech startup culture, impressive for a country of just 7 million. But while venture capital and crowdfunding are important, big business has a role to play. Large firms in Britain have as much as £750 billion held in reserve. Many are helping to incubate startups by offering a mix of funding, contacts, office space and mentoring as part of initiatives such as London's Tech City. Shell's Springboard is a UK-based social investment programme founded in 2005. Springboard aims to find the UK's next big idea in low-carbon enterprise and innovation. Every year it awards £330,000 to innovative and commercially viable business ideas that aim to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In the last 8 years, the initiative has awarded £2.25 million to 62 businesses. Shell Livewire is another source of support for young UK entrepreneurs. It offers free online business advice and startup awards of £1,000 and £10,000 to its 200,000 members. Funding is just one element of starting a business. Tonight, 4 innovators will tell us what they think needs to be done to ensure UK businesses become world beaters.
Thank you, Hannah. Welcome, everybody, to this evening's event. It's a magnificent room, and very suitable for this event, given this has been a room in which lots of inventions have been first shown. Welcome also to people who are watching live stream online, and hopefully you can participate using the hashtag this evening, which is hashtag IQ2Innovate, which apparently is up on the screen as I speak. Tonight's event is called Innovating for Success, how to create the next generation of British world-beating companies. And it's a timely moment to have this debate. Growth, it seems, is returning to the British economy, but we all know that a key part of our future will lie in our capacity to innovate, to grow dynamic SMEs. But how clear is our understanding about what drives innovation and enterprise? Recent work by the RSA, the organisation I run, Demos also, has found that what motivates people to become entrepreneurs is more subtle than we might think, less about money, more about autonomy, for example. Many people who set up enterprises don't think of themselves as being particularly innovative. They just want to do their own thing and be in charge of their own lives. And of course, we have to compete with the rest of the world. While I have been speaking, 100,000 new SMEs have been set up in China. No, I just made that up, actually. But you were going with it for a while, weren't you? You're willing to believe anything about China. Now, let me just tell you how things are going to work this evening. We are going to have our four fantastic speakers who span a whole wealth of experience, of enterprise, from one of our most experienced and successful lifelong inventors to somebody who is just now emerging. They're going to have 3 minutes each to tell you why they're here, tell you a bit about themselves. And then after those 3 minutes each, I'm going to ask them 3 questions. I might chat with them a bit as well, and then we're going to open up to you, and we'll finish promptly at 8 o'clock. Andy Murray's arriving about 7:55. Just in case you were thinking of leaving, don't tell anybody else, though. Okay, so let me tell you about who's going to be speaking to you. I'll introduce them to you in turn. So first of all, an inventor, best known for his wind-up radio, which he invented to help communicate information about AIDS to the people of Africa. He runs Trevor Bayliss Brands. Actually, it rather reveals who I'm going to be introducing, doesn't it, when I say that? Oh, I don't write the script, sorry. Anyway, he runs Trevor Bayliss Brands PLC as a company dedicated to helping inventors to develop and protect their ideas and find a route to market. Please welcome Trevor Bayliss, OBE.
Well, thank you all for coming to see us. First of all, everybody thinks that to be an inventor, you have to have a Viennese accent, a broken glasses, and you've got to be some sort of a fruitcake, right? No, you're laughing, but we are all inventors. How many of you guys and girls have had a good idea, thought to yourself, it must have been done before, you've done nothing about it, and then a few months or years later see the rest of the thing in a shop window and say, cool, blimey, I thought of that. Come on, put your hands up. No, you're laughing. Art is pleasure, invention is treasure. Now, the most important thing is that if we do have a good idea, when the money rolls in, you, the inventor, he or she, should not be rolled out. And that's the important thing. And one of the reasons I'm here tonight is to make sure that all of you realize what capability you've got. If I can do it, you can do it. How's that? Is that 3 minutes?
No, go on.
Oh, that's all right. No, but honestly, well, I'm known, of course, about my radio, and that was pure chance. Chance favours the old-prepared mind. I could have been watching Come Dancing on the Golden Shop, and I was watching a programme about the spread of HIV/AIDS in Africa, which was ghastly. They were throwing these bodies in open graves, and you thought, oh, blimey, do I need to watch this? But I listened long enough, and they said the only way they could stop this dreadful disease was through education and information, which could be best brought to these people using a radio. But there was a problem. Most of Africa didn't have electricity, and batteries are horrendously expensive. People were bartering their maize and their rice in order to buy batteries, and where do you get batteries up the Wadi Tharthar, right? Now, I'm thinking of those old days when we used to have a gramophone, and I'm thinking, hang on, if you can get all that noise by dragging a rusty narrow around a piece of old Bakelite using a spring, sure there's enough power in the spring to drive a dynamo which would run a radio. And I did it. Boom, boom, right, in the workshop. It took me 20 minutes. I got a It did. No, but let me tell you, it did take 20 minutes because I had a cheap transistor radio. I also had a hand brace and a DC motor. And when I hooked them up, boom, boom, off she went. Right? You want to kick me off? Thank you.
He only needed 2 minutes, and he only needed 20 minutes to invent the radio. It's fantastic. If anyone below the age of 50 wants to know what either Come Dancing or The Golden Shot are, come and see me afterwards. Okay. Our next speaker is former Dragon's Den investor, social entrepreneur, founder of the School for Startups, a social enterprise that has instructed over 10,000 business owners in the skills needed for successful entrepreneurship. Please welcome Doug Richard.
Good evening. I think I'm here because I am a perfect example of how you can fail your way to success. Yeah, I have started 7 businesses. I have sold 6. The 7th cost myself and investors an even £7 million, which is very unfortunate. And You get me drunk, I'll tell you exactly how I lost all their money and mine. I have been successful, I have become wealthy 3 times, and I have lost that wealth twice. One of the lessons I've learned is you should end on an up note. Yeah. Right now, I'm there, and I'm not really inclined to risk it again. My wife will kill me. I think I'm here now because 5.5 years ago, I started a social enterprise called the School for Startups, and I shall correct our chairman's introduction. As of 3 years ago, we had taught some 10,000 businesses. As of this week, we've taught a little over 30,000 people how to start their own business. And we do not view our mission as finding the next Google. We find our mission is to use entrepreneurship to empower people, to put them in a position where they're in control of their own lives. Entrepreneurship is not about getting rich. Entrepreneurship is about being in control of your destiny and being able to do with your life what you will make of it. And that is a great gift you can give to people. And that is the goal of the school. And out of that come some people whose ambitions blossom as a result of that empowerment and then go on to start businesses of extraordinary size and capacity that happen to become the next Google. But you don't search for the next Google. You search for the broadest group of people, none of whom you know, all of whom could be the next Google, and you put all of them in a position to succeed, and then from the strangest places, some of them do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, so our next speaker is now entrepreneur in residence at Index Ventures, but until last month he was senior policy advisor to the Prime Minister, responsible for developing key policies to improve the environment for enterprise in the UK. He created the government's Tech City Initiative, the enormously successful Tech City Initiative, and pioneered the government's life science strategy to attract and support biotech and pharmaceutical startups in a cluster around Cambridge. Unfortunately, since he left Number 10, he has slipped in terms of his sartorial elegance. But please welcome Rohan Silva.
Until 10 days ago, I worked at Number 10 and I quit to start my own, hopefully, world-beating technology company here in London. And just after I quit, someone pointed out to me that no one has ever left Number 10 and started a company that's not a lobbying firm, a public affairs firm, or a consultancy. So what I'm about to do in trying to build a technology company, I think is probably a bit daft. But the reason that I'm doing it, and the reason I think I'm here, is that I really believe that something very special is happening in the UK, and that there is an opportunity to build world-beating companies in the UK in a way that wasn't true even in recent years. And a lot of the things that I was lucky enough to be able to work on, like the Tech City Initiative, like creating the world's most generous tax breaks for angel investment, the first bit of money into a company, creating the world's first entrepreneur visas, entrepreneur relief, so that entrepreneurs keep more of the money that they generate, incredible tax reliefs for people that join startup companies, a whole set of things like this that I think add up to the building blocks that are needed for world-beating companies to be built here in London. That's the hope. And there's a terribly disgusting term in the world of technology of eating your own dog food, which means that if you've created some software or some hardware, you're supposed to use it yourself as a company. You're supposed to eat your own dog food. And that's what I'm going to be doing. I did say to someone the other day that they said, what are you going to be doing? And I said, I'm going to eat my own dog food. And they thought I'd said, I'm going to make my own dog food, which isn't yet my business idea, but it may well become that. So I'm really looking forward to this debate. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohan. Okay, show of hands. Who travelled here on a bus? A few of you. You're too posh. Okay, so our next speaker, our final speaker, 25-year-old winner of the Shell Springboard 2013 competition, co-founder of Vantage Power, a startup developing a hybrid electric power train for retrofitting in buses, which could save operators £20,000 per bus per year in fuel cost, as well as reduce noise pollution and maintenance costs. A very worthy inventor, as I'm sure you'd agree, and I think featured in tonight's Evening Standard, as I understand it. Please welcome Alex Shea.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Is this on, or we're going to have to do a microphone operation? Rohan, you stole my line about dogs, because I was going to talk about that. The reason why I'm here, partly, is because our business teaches new tricks to old dogs, except that these dogs are old buses. And what we do is we have designed a hybrid system that retrofits into existing buses. So within a matter of hours, your old bus goes to having a new engine, which saves £20,000 a year in fuel consumption and reduces emissions by 40%. And the emissions that we're talking about here are some pretty ghastly stuff. We may have heard about this in the news recently: nitrous oxides, particulate matter, carbon monoxide. Anybody that's a cyclist who drives behind buses knows exactly what I'm talking about here. And this is a big problem which the government is trying to solve, getting these emissions down. And so this is one of the main reasons why we're starting the company. And also, as Matthew said earlier, there is a real feeling of ownership, of self-direction, of doing your own thing when you start a business, which is exhilarating. It's incredibly exciting. And this is one of the reasons why I'm here. This is what I would like to try and instill in especially the younger generation. If you have an idea, just go out and try it, especially when you're young. You have so much less to lose than when you're a little bit older. One of the things that I'm doing in the space at the moment is as a result of a project that myself and my co-founder set up before our business, called Racing Green Endurance, where we designed and built the world's longest range and arguably sexiest looking electric car to prove to the world that electric vehicle technology is a goer, it can work, but more importantly, to help stimulate and inspire children to take up science and technology within their education. For one, they are very interesting subjects, but for two, it's absolutely vital for our economy. So that's something I'm hoping to touch on a little bit tonight. I'm looking forward to a very interesting, exciting, and robust debate. So let's get started. Thank you very much.
I'm going to be asking the panel 3 questions, and they're going to have some comfortable chairs to sit in a moment. I don't know where they're going to come from the ceiling maybe, or something, I don't know, but there'll be some chairs. The questions are going to be, first of all, I'm going to ask them what was the biggest factor in their success, or a different version of that, what stopped them from giving up at their darkest hour? So it's kind of a question about motivation. The second question I'm going to ask them is, what is the one thing that government should do to make things easier for the next generation of budding innovators? Come in. Very good. Thank you. And then the third thing I'm going to ask them is, what can big business do to help? Now, we've got Q&A after that. But actually, when you've heard their answers to those 3 questions, if any of you have got a better answer than any of them have provided, then just shout it out. And particularly, by the way, I'm favouring women. That's not a personal statement about me. It's just because they're all blokes, and I'm a bloke as well. So I'm particularly interested in women who've got a better answer to any of these 3 questions as we go along. So feel free to shout it out when they've finished. Otherwise, there'll be a general Q&A later. So, panel, take your seats. Anywhere you like. Okay, so this first question. The biggest factor in your success. What stopped you from giving up at your darkest hour? I'm going to ask you, Trevor.
Do you know, the most beautiful thing that ever happened to me was when I first fell in love with myself. Do you understand? No, that's true. True. No. I always say to people, do what gives you a buzz. That's what it's about. Do you honestly want to be the richest man in the graveyard? There are no pockets in a shroud. You know what I mean? I've always followed my heart, and I've always done what I wanted to do. And ironically, it's not about dosh, it's about quality of life and so on.
And was there ever a moment, Trevor, when you just thought, sod this, why shouldn't I become an accountant or something which is more slightly more kind of reliable?
Well, no, but you see, we're laughing at that one. You see, the thing is, most of us don't have all the skills we need anyway. You wouldn't come to me for your tax returns.
No. So I've heard. So I've heard, yeah.
No. But the thing is, you see, I was brought up with my parents, and they taught me a word called decency. You know, you go to and do business with people, you think, oh, they'll look after you. And before you know it, bang, they've kicked you out of it. And we've got to do something about it. And I think we can.
Very good. So self-belief, and wanting to do the stuff that you love. Doug? Share a moment of doubt. Well, you had a moment of doubt. You lost all that money.
Yeah, more than once.
More than once.
Let me pick the bigger
So
one.
did you kind of feel like giving up at that point?
Do you mind if I put some words around that?
Yeah.
To give it its context, fine. So,
Okay.
I had a very small software company in Los Angeles called Visual Software. We did 3D graphics and animation. We were kind of cool, at least we thought we were. And a very, very large US public corporation offered to buy us. And I remember the offer very well. It had ones, it had zeros, it had commas, it was really big. It was the kind of number you want to see in your life, you know? And I even had sound effects. And so in a very undisciplined manner, being quite naive, we simply said yes. Now, as it happens, the way the transaction was conducted in those days, instead of just us giving them our company and they giving us huge pots of cash, they gave us shares in their public corporation, and we were obliged to work for them. I was obliged in particular to work for them to help merge the businesses, and I couldn't sell my shares for 100 days. To make matters more complicated, I was headquartered in Hollywood, California. They were located in Dallas, Texas. This is clearly not an American audience. That is not just 2,000 miles. That's 200 years back in time. And I had to move from LA to Dallas with my very young family at the time. And as you can imagine, I was upset on day 89 when I woke up one morning to find that the share price in the parent company had fallen by 99%, and I was wiped out. I had a big fucking house in Dallas. Excuse my language. I had a very large house in Dallas.
I'm so sorry. I'm so very sorry.
You just heard a beep. Rudeness is international. So to answer your question more directly, I did what any normal adult does. I sulked for at least 3 days. And I then woke up one morning, and it was quite a distinct feeling. I woke up on the 4th morning. I had lost everything I owned. This was the sum of 2 companies. This was 10 years' worth of effort that had gone down the toilet. And the only thing I felt at that moment was anger. And the only thing I desired, if I'm honest, was revenge. Now, I am not actually saying to you that this is why nobody ever hires me as a motivational speaker. But I can't say to you, gosh, you know, dude, revenge, go for it. But it worked for me. And over the...
And Gordon Brown. No, I didn't.
Careful.
Okay.
But over the next 2 months, I'll wind it up for you. Over the next 2 months, I did a hostile takeover of the company that took me over, installed myself as the president and CEO of the 4th largest public software company in America, gathered up all of the executives of that corporation, and fired those sons of guns. Which turns out to have been the second stupidest thing I've ever done. There you go. Does that help?
We've got 2 really good candidates now for what drives you on through adversity. We've got Trevor, which is being true to yourself and enjoying yourself, and we've got Doug saying it's basically bestial desire for revenge. So that's two views. Now, Rowan, I used to work in Number 10 back in the days when Labour was electable, and I remember it was a very frustrating experience often. So although you haven't been an entrepreneur before, you must have had that feeling with Tech City and other ideas when the bureaucracy was against you and the cabinet was against you and you couldn't get to see the Prime Minister, etc. How did you keep yourself going?
I used to call those weekdays. That's horrible. It's true, and two huge problems I used to face on kind of entrepreneurship and things. One was that Whitehall is incredibly, shockingly comfortable with big business, and I remember talking to some civil servants who were planning a consultation, working on some policy, and said to them, have you spoken to businesses about this? And they said, yes, no, we've consulted widely. And I said, who have you consulted? And they said, Tesco, Google, and Microsoft. I said, really, is this the entirety of your consultation? And, the way in which big government is comfortable with big business was really shocking. And when we got into government in May 2010, we were really appalled by this. And the fight to open up government to small businesses, of which Tech City was a kind of part, was key. And the way I sort of tried to keep things going was, firstly, by creating processes like Tech City, initiatives like that, I knew that politicians who are am I allowed to say this, in the main narcissistic and sort of publicity focused, want to be around success. And so every week, every couple of weeks, we have a minister typically going to East London. And whenever they go to East London to go and celebrate the growth of the technology cluster there, they often want announcements. And so that means a ratchet in favour of policy to support entrepreneurship and innovation. And that was one thing that kept me going. The other was really trying to focus, and I'm sure this is true if you're running a business as well, on the numbers. Because, however much departments across Whitehall assume that growth comes from big businesses and innovation comes from the corporations, the truth is that that's not true. 95% of net new jobs, according to the Kaufman Foundation, come from companies less than 5 years old. Nesta did a brilliant report in the UK showing that just 6% of high-growth firms in the UK generate 60% of all the new jobs in the UK. So it's early-stage companies, it's startups, it's innovators in their garages and in their bedrooms. That's where the innovation comes from. And as long as I felt we were focused on the data, we wouldn't get steered too far wrong. But every day, a battle. And every day, the truth is that big business and big government sort of talk the same language. It's a lot of the same sort of people. And we don't really use the term corruption in the UK, but the way in which, when we were elected in May 2010, 95% of government contracts went to companies with more than 250 employees. You see just how cozy that relationship is, and as you say, Matthew, just how hard it was every single day to fight for enterprise.
Very good. So conviction is our third answer to this question. What keeps you going when the odds are against you? Alex, share a dark moment and how you got through it, or has it all been sunny uplands for you?
Well, it hasn't all been sunny uplands, but I haven't been in business or real life very long, so I can't say.
It could be something awful that happened to you at school if you want. I mean, we don't mind.
Try to put that behind. But I mean, this assumes that when you're at rock bottom, you realise you're at rock bottom. And if you don't realise that, then you are kind of tempted to think it's just another day at the office, or before the office, another day in the bedroom because we couldn't afford an office. So that's one thing. And the other thing is actually a piece of advice that I got given by somebody in this audience, is that when you have had a long string of good luck and good fortune, which we have had pretty recently with our business, it's going very well at the moment, you have to remember that there are going to be some pretty difficult times ahead. But equally, the reverse is true. When you're in these difficult times and everything seems like it's against you, you have to remember that at some point the good times will return, and then perhaps it's more a question of patience and self-belief and perseverance than it is about picking yourself up from the bottom. That's my
Very good. So wisdom, conviction, revenge, fulfillment or pleasure or whatever it is. That's a very interesting set of responses. Now, who wants to share with us a moment when it all felt it wasn't going to work, and particularly in a business context, not too personal maybe, and how they got through it? Does anyone want to offer anything different from what we've heard from our panel? You have to kind of really throw your arms in the air so that I can see you, but anyone want to add to what we've heard? Are you all just so incredibly fortunate and successful and nothing's ever gone wrong for you and it's all completely wonderful?
Can't see them.
There we are. No, they're all... Ah, yes. Good. Hang on. Wait for the microphone to come up to you. There's someone up there. Where's the mic? Wherever the mic?
Run.
Up there.
Oh, come on. It's a leisurely mic, right?
Keep going. Don't go too far.
Turn left.
There.
left.
Yes, great. Tell us who you are.
I'm Fabrice Ward.
Yep.
So my answer is spookiness.
Spookiness?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just when you think everything's going to fail, then there's something turns up to save you.
So superstition, basically. Yeah.
I don't know what it is, but that's happened many times.
Really?
And
Okay.
not just me, I've spoken to other people who...
Very good.
Okay.
So basically,
spooky
irrationality is another contender. No, thank you. Is another contender. I think rationality is overstated as a virtue. Yes, there's someone over there. I'm desperate for a woman, but anyway.
All right.
Steady.
I'm not your woman, I'm afraid. My suggestion, my name's Charlie Ramsey, my suggestion is patience.
Patience,
yes. I don't know whether the panel have any views on this they could touch on later, but I had an idea in 2003 to start a business, and I got a resounding no from the people that I approached to start it. And in fact, in 2007, I finally started the business, having been working full-time since then. And since then, it's been a good success. So it took 4 years, but I don't know whether you feel that businesses need necessarily to be rushed. Perhaps, although many innovations move very fast, perhaps patience is no bad thing.
Let me randomly put that to you, Doug. What do you think? Do you think patience is an underrated virtue?
Actually, I think it's absolutely an underrated virtue. I think I used to be extremely impatient when I started my companies, and I desired outcomes and success as quickly as possible, and thus I hurried past things that I thought would take too long to gestate. I am no longer in a hurry. What I'm doing now, I'd be perfectly happy to do for the rest of my life, and as soon as I stopped hurrying, I found that we grew very quickly, because I was willing to take on things that were going to take a long time, and it turns out a long time is shorter than it used to be, you know? And so if I start a program now that's going to gestate for 2 years, well, you know, 2 years comes by. And we've been clocking up 100% growth now for 5.5 years. So something's going fine. And I think largely it's this gentleman's point. I'm not in a hurry anymore.
Right, so we're going slightly off the topic, but I can't resist asking you this question, because I felt this when I was in number 10, which was that any politician who has integrity knows that the best policies take several years to deliver. Therefore, those best policies won't succeed until they've left office. One of the reasons why we have such a weak infrastructure in Britain is the gap between signing the cheque, which is unpopular, and cutting the ribbon, which is popular. And you sign the cheque, and then some politician you've never even heard of 20 years later cuts the ribbon, or 10 years later. Do you think lack of patience is a really big problem in our political system?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think that there's weirdly a lot of patience in one sense, which is that what some people call pet projects are actually about patience. And I often used to say to people that in number 10 and when we were in opposition, that if you had a kind of an idea, as long as you wrote it down in a press release, sooner or later it would get used, because there'll always be a sort of Friday, and you've seen the desperate scramble for something to be announced on a Sunday. You can, as long as you're patient, you can get your cockamamie scheme out there. I think on the kind of long-termism and patience, you know, I do think it is a problem. I think that there's an issue about how quickly there's a cycle of civil servants. So that's not about the politicians, but the loss of institutional memory and patience in Whitehall. But I think the point about who gets the credit, I think politicians are mad enough generally to assume that they'll get the credit, even if it's 30 years later.
Sorry.
Sure.
I always believe that invention is both social as well as economic. Look, somebody might come to me with a peculiar shaped walking stick. You say, well, why would I want that? And then you find this person's got a terrible, terrible deformity. For the first time, that person can walk. Fantastic. Then you look around the world, there's only 10 people with the same problem. So what? We make 10 walking sticks and we've saved the life of 10 people. So that's purely social. But those that make them can get the publicity, so they get their money back anyway. But it's about the standard word called decency. I'm not a rip-off merchant. I've been ripped off many a time. We've got to stop that. I want to stop people having their ideas stolen, and I want the theft of intellectual property to become a white-collar crime.
Now, Trevor, I'm going to stop you, because we're going to... So you get a chance to reprise that, because what we're doing now is we're moving to the second question. I'm going to ask. Oh, it's fine. That's fine. You can make an even more eloquent case for it, and I can allow a full round of applause rather than that. So now it's all going very, very well, but in my experience, nothing deflates the energy of a conversation more than complaining about government. But we are moving into potentially complaining about government mode. So I'm going to ask you to maintain your energy levels. Despite the fact that you get into that kind of feeling. So the question is, what one thing more could government be doing to encourage innovation enterprise? And I'm going to start Rohan, with you, because there must be an idea that you couldn't quite get over the line before you left, and now you can share it. Now you can share it with us.
Well, look, I think, I touched on this before, I think, and this is going to sound, is this going to bring out an You can amplify the
Okay.
The biggest thing that government can do, in my opinion, is buy things from innovators, right? The problem with government, and we made a bit of a change on this, but it's deeply rooted. The big problem in government is that government doesn't buy things from startups and from innovators. And that is actually very different to the situation in Israel and the situation in America. So if you take IT, for example, IT contracts, in May 2010, just 70% of government IT contracts went to just 7 companies, right? And I promise you, those 7 companies weren't creative startups that Doug works with. These are the big, colossal, multinational IT companies that basically stopped innovating about 10 years ago. And there's if you look at the kind of great stories, if you look at the great stories of British world-beating tech companies and companies, one is Autonomy, which was founded by Mike Lynch. And Mike Lynch tells a story, and he tells the story of how Autonomy came into being. And Autonomy came into being because some policemen in South Yorkshire broke all the rules and gave a contract to a startup company. And that startup company was Autonomy. And Mike is very clear that if that hadn't happened, if his company hadn't got that contract, it simply wouldn't have been there. And that's what's so important. You know, people talk and talk about government grants and government loans and so on, obviously very important. But what really matters is your first contract, your first customer. And government is the biggest purchaser of goods and services in the entire economy. In May 2010, when David Cameron became Prime Minister, you used to have to provide 3 years' worth of accounts just to bid for a government contract. So if you were a company less than 3 years old, you couldn't even bid. The procurement process used to say, please list your experience delivering government contracts. So if you'd never delivered a government contract before, you couldn't get into the process. So it was absolute madness. But the big win, the big change is still, I think, the culture change. And we established an aspiration that 25% of government contracts should go to SMEs. I think, Matthew asked, what am I depressed we didn't do? I think we should set a 50% target and not an aspiration. In America, it's written into law that 25% of federal government contracts go to SMEs. And of the £150 billion that is spent on goods and services by the British government every year, if half of that was going to startups, if half of that were going to innovators, it would make the world of difference. And if we can pull it off, then I think that we will see there is nothing bigger in tax, in regulation, anything else, nothing bigger that can be done in this country to support enterprise and support innovation.
Hold on, I'm going to come to you in a second, Trevor. I'm going to come to you. I mean, I've got strict instructions. Just to say, Rowan, on that, I don't agree with this government on everything by any means, but I have to say this area of the commitment to give more work to SMEs is absolutely clear. And when you meet the people in charge of that strategy, Liam Maxwell, for example, Liam Maxwell, who's head of technology in government, he's one of the most frightening people I've ever met. His veins stand out in the sides of his head. He's so determined to get more stuff going to SMEs. So it's real.
Liam turns up at meetings, this is honestly true, IT government contract meetings, with a briefcase full of fake £50 notes. And it's £1 million worth of fake pound notes in this briefcase. And he gets it out in meetings, and someone's saying, we're going to spend £500 million on an IT contract. He says, what, so 500 of these? And he is a frightening man. It's all a bit
very good.
Isn't it?
It's very good.
I think he's got a horse's head in his other back that he gets out for.
So, Alex, one thing that government could do to make life easier for people like you. Well, maybe there's nothing they can do. You've done it.
Well, I mean, firstly, I have to say the EIS, SCIS, Government Loans, Technology Strategy Board, that's all fantastic. That's, I think, catalysed a lot of businesses, certainly for us and for others that I know, in a way that may not have been possible before. But if it could come down to one word, I think it comes down to education. Because let's take an analogy here. If the UK government suddenly decided everybody now needs to speak Chinese, over the next 20 years, second language, mandatory, has to be Chinese. You're not going to start forgive me, teaching the 40 to 60 to 70, 80-year-olds first. You're going to start the grassroots, the kids going through school, because they're going to be the entrepreneurs, the leaders, the innovators, the businessmen in 20 years' time. And innovation and entrepreneurship, some people manage to pick up, but many more people will be in a position to do something innovative and entrepreneurial if they're exposed to this world from a young age. And I fear that many people are only getting their first taste of what this is like when they hit university or even after university, by which time they could have had 10, 15 years of exposure, learning about balance sheets, cash flow statements, how the government interacts, how contracts are done, on a perhaps basic level to start with, but building up over one's career, I think that would be the most useful thing that the government could do.
Very good. No, Trevor, it's you now. So, Trevor, now's your chance to return. Don't change your idea now. Stick to your IP idea. So what's the one thing government should do?
Well, first things first, we've got to educate our children in a proper way. Kids are becoming so dependent on computers and mobile phones, right? They're not doing the basics. When I was a child, I could do the most amazing things with my Meccano set, and yet I couldn't write my name. My father taught me that during the war. And it's fantastic. Nuts, bolts, screws, washers, and everything. It's got to a point where I can make prototypes using that sort of stuff. I mean, kids have got to be taught hands-on how to do things and not to become, if you like, TV and computer dependent. They'll just become fat and obese and be chopped out. So that's got to be part of it. The other thing too, and I have an interest on this in a personal reason, that kids, one, they've already got to be taught to swim, but that's another matter. No?
How would you teach them to swim? Would you just chuck them in the deep end, Trevor?
Look, you're laughing and joking at me,
not.
but look, I promise you. There are so many kids now who miss out. I think every child should be taught to swim so that if they do fall in the river, they stand a chance to survive. That's just one of the things, because I swam for Great Britain, as you probably know, many, many years ago. But the other sort of phase in the whole thing, really, is the encouragement. All the kids are not taught anything about intellectual property. What's that, Mum? What's that? Look, let me ask you guys and girls here, how many of you were taught anything about intellectual property at school or college or university? Put your hands up if you were.
A few.
There's one, two?
About 20, 25.
How many people are there here? 400?
200.
No, look. 400. I've made my point, and I've proven it.
You have?
Basically, it's this. I think use history to prove that the reason why we lose so much is because most of us go down the pub or club, tell everybody about this great idea, and not being realised that once you've disclosed your idea, you cannot then protect it. Now, the students should be taught that. And there should be a safe haven for them to go to. I'm working, believe it or not, with the Metropolitan Police at the moment. Back to what I was saying about theft of intellectual property, white-collar crime. But it would be great if you had a police station near to you where you could sit down on camera and discuss your idea and your patent application and so on, so that UK PLC can stand behind you should somebody nick your idea.
So just in essence, Trevor, just so that, because I kind of cut across you earlier, what you're saying is that theft of intellectual property should be a criminal offence.
Yes.
It shouldn't be not civil, but criminal. Okay, yeah, thank you very much. So we've had more contracts to SMEs, we've had better education in enterprise for young people, and we've had the idea that IP should be a criminal, stealing IP should be a criminal offence. Doug, what's your one idea?
Well, in fairness, they've been taken. My number one was taken by Rohan, number two was taken by Alex. I disagree with Trevor, so I kind of have to come up with my third idea. Mm-hmm. But fortunately, I have more.
Oh, good.
Interestingly enough, I think another thing the government could do is to decrease its myopic bias on its deep need to imitate Silicon Valley. Mm. We are not, and with all due respect to Tech City, which I think is a wonderful initiative, many people don't understand the fullness of your vision, and they think that what we need to be is another Silicon Valley. We don't need to be another Silicon Valley. In other realms, in other industries, we are Silicon Valley. In the creative industries, London is the center of the universe. People come here to get a bit of that magic. We pay lip service to the creative industries, but we don't appreciate the percentage of the economy and the types of intellectual export that this country does better than anyone else in the world. One of the programs I run is the School for Creative Startups. What we try to do is bring some of the processes and infrastructure and support that tech companies enjoy and bring it to people in design and fashion and music and other areas, which, by the way, have the same possibility for growth and scale and creating economic growth as tech companies do. So we have to be less reductive and less narrowly focused on how others have succeeded and start backing our own organic successes, the things we do well, and I think we would prosper incommensurately from it.
Very good. I wasn't asked to answer any of these questions, but I'm going to answer this one. Then I'm going to ask you for your one idea for what government should do. I would create a university course to be taught in lots of universities and colleges which would combine technology, creativity and business, because it seems to me that people who've got that triangle of skills is absolutely what we want, and we still teach people those three things very often very separate from each other. Okay, so who's got a brilliant killer idea for government? There's somebody up there.
Thank you. My name's Adrian McConnick, and I
can't hear you.
Microphone near your mouth, please.
Bit there, is that better?
There you go.
Yeah.
I run what is only just about a startup, because we've been going since 2006, a software company. And I just want to give you a little idea of some of the things the helpful things we've experienced from government. So we do
Briefly.
we do our development offshore. So the Borders Agency have refused to allow our project manager to come to the UK with a visa. Somebody the other day very proudly rang us up and said, we've got this new product, we think you might be interested in it. We've got a smart innovation grant for it. Do you want to come and have a look at it? We came and have a look at it. It was pretty much a copy of our product that we developed back in 2007, etc., etc., etc. So I don't think there is I don't think there's a kind of miracle answer around this. Actually, I think a lot of what government does is just well-meaning busybodies. Yeah. And a lot of what they need to do is they need to just get out of the way of innovators.
Okay.
And I think it's really that simple.
Very good. Right, who else kind of subscribes to this kind of government's just busybodies, get out of the way? Yeah, do you subscribe to it? No, good. Okay. I mean, I don't mean no good because I've got a vested interest in it, but there's somebody here. Where's the mic? Oh, yeah, great.
Okay. Can I just say one thing?
Wait, just wait till this bloke's spoken, Trevor. Yeah, all right.
Certainly.
Yeah, go on.
Now, your question...
Don't wave the mic while you talk. You have to use one hand to wave and the other hand to hold the mic.
Lovely. Your question to the panel was, what should the government do to bring about this change?
Yeah.
Right. With the greatest respect, in my view, the panelists have missed the central point, which is we need a total change of our banking system, right? And we need to create a banking system which, in fact, recognizes the various types of business entities in the country, starting from micro units, so microfinancial institutions, to SMEs, which covers a whole range of things, and to the large companies that Mr. De Silva was talking about, a different type of thing. So that's one thing. The second thing is...
I need two. You're only allowed two.
No, I need to put this out because it's interconnected. So long as we have a system which gives capital gains tax exemption for private residences, we will never be able to feed the money for SMEs. And that is the point. And because of that, every time you go to a bank, you have this chronic question aimed at you. What is your collateral? So if you do not have equity in your private residence, you have no chance of getting any money.
Okay.
So banking reform, tax reform, banishing of capital gains tax is my answer.
Okay, very good. I'm going to take one more brief comment, and then Rohan, I'm just going to bring you back on banks. But oh, there's a woman. Hey!
Oh.
Two.
Another woman. 2 women. Oh my word! It's a revolution. Okay. Yes. Go. Hi.
I was really interested in your comments on the government at supporting innovation, and we talked about the coziness of big business, but how can we encourage medium-sized business to support innovation, not by companies, but actually, you know, whether it's an incubator system.
That's the next question. That's the next question. Sorry.
Aren't you glad I asked?
Yeah, no. That's very good, the way you've done that. Okay, yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So my name's Daisy Ellison. And my thought was just about the approach. A lot of comments so far have been about IP and competition and people stealing ideas. And I just think we're in an age of free information now and should not be looking at working collaboratively and actually the government putting in infrastructure that allows all these great minds working separately to actually come together and unite as one and probably come up with a better solution.
A lot of innovation is collaborative. Good point. Okay, Trevor, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, just a quickie. I believe achievement is more important than qualification. I mean, you know, what's the point in being a master chef if you can't fry an egg, if you understand me? People are spending thousands and thousands of pounds on their kids' education. And yet, if they do come up with a qualification, then does that guarantee them a job? No. The most important thing, I mean, what's crazy? I mean, all I've really got is GC football. And the only reason why I got that is I let me use my jacket as a goalpost, do you understand? But I've got 13 doctorates now, would you believe? I mean, it's crazy. But they're all honorary, and it's the way they've said, well done, Trev. We have to, no, truly, we have to reward those ordinary men and women who come up with a great idea which could change all our lives, both socially and commercially. I mean, there are things like a paperclip, for example. Huh? Any of you could have made that, and I wish I had.
Very good. Rohan,
yeah.
Banks.
Yeah, so I totally agree with the point that, you know, accessing finance, accessing capital is key. And we did a whole bunch of stuff, and there's lots more to do, but loads on tax breaks for angel investment, because actually if you've got a really risky startup like mine's about to be, it's angel investors and venture capital that provides the funding, whether that's in America or anywhere else. That's just true. It's not a bank loan at that point. We've created amazing startup loans, which Doug is very involved in. So anything up to about £5,000 now, you can get a loan if you're a young person from government, exactly on the same terms as a student loan to go to university. And you can get it before university, you can get it instead of going to university, you can get it after going to university. And it's basically no questions asked. You get a mentor, you've got to put together a business plan, but there's no credit check. This is to help you get your business off the ground.
Oh, that's good.
It's absolutely fantastic. We've put lots of money into things like non-bank forms of lending, peer-to-peer lending. We put £100 million into that last year. So incredibly, I mean, everything you're describing, I completely agree with. And, you know, is there need for kind of bigger structural reform to make sure that you actually have a big bank lending to SMEs? I think so. And something the Treasury is working on right now, which I think is in the public domain, is the creation of a...
Well, it will be soon.
It will be soon. Is the creation of what is being called a business bank. And so this will be a new bank set up by government specifically to lend to SMEs. So I just agree with everything you're saying. And just very quickly on the point about collaboration, part of the reason that I worked so much on trying to support clusters was these are places that people bump into one another. It was Jane Jacobs who wrote the Life and Death of Great American Cities, who says the great wealth of our cities come from random collisions on the sidewalk. And you know, that kind of collaboration really happens, particularly in cities. And what governments tend to want to do is spread things around evenly, when actually density matters and collaboration in clusters really matters. But a very hard thing to do in government is to fight for that.
Could I? I'm sorry.
Yes, briefly.
Just a very quick one. I was actually turned down by the Design Council when I came up with my product. And they said it wouldn't work, people couldn't afford it, couldn't make it here in Britain, etc., etc. In fact, I've got it on my toilet wall at home, you know. But honestly, that's the way I was treated by government. And if it hadn't been for Nelson Mandela, who supported me, then my product wouldn't have come to market. I mean, it's absolutely amazing the way they treat it. I wasn't even smart enough to get a Smart Award, right? It was only when it went out on television about the radio that all those, I won't swear.
No, don't.
So-and-sos phoned me back to say, oh, no, we didn't mean that, you know. And you think they're scum. No.
You were going to say something, Dan?
Well,
briefly.
I think it's great fun to bash banks and governments. And I'm sure it gives everyone a warm feeling, but it's also a deeply irrational conversation. To the gentleman here who says we need a reform of the banking system, banks don't lend to startups. Banks shouldn't lend to startups. I don't want my money lent to startups, period. Startups are high risk. Banks are engaged in low risk activity. It is a foolish conflation of small business and young business to think that it's young business that needs to be served by banks. It doesn't. It can't. It shouldn't. That's not where that money comes from. Hang on. I also take issue, because I like to take issue.
This is like question time, isn't it? Except it's interesting, but go on.
I also take issue with the notion that the solution to anything is the government creating a bank. One of the things I think that when you are a foreigner coming to the UK, one of the most striking things you find is how few banks there are, right? I come out of a country that admittedly has its own challenges, but we have some strengths. And one of the strengths is what I would call entrepreneurial banking. We have 30, 40,000 banks in the US. You have like 7, okay? Don't tell me you guys have a free market in banking. You don't.
True.
And therefore the solution to not having a free market in banking cannot be creating a government bank. Somewhere in that is the height of foolishness. I would suggest that what we need is the opportunity for an entrepreneur to create entrepreneurial banking. But it is the hardest country in the world to start a new banking function in. And therefore, you want to solve the problem, let 1,000 points of light start, and 1,000 creators will come up with 1,000 solutions.
Yeah. Very good. Okay, I've got, round of applause.
Have you got a passport?
I've got 3 more ideas that are going to for government. One's here, one's there, and one's there. Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry, Daniel Clara and I work at King's in London. One of the reflections I would have is we want collaboration, absolutely, but the whole point of being an entrepreneur is that you think differently, you think outside the box, and our schools and our universities, generally speaking, don't encourage this enough. So one of the key things is, what can government do at any level? The one thing I'd say in the national curriculum to put in is watch TED Talks. Get from an early age kids watching things outside of the norm, talking about interdisciplinary learning, thinking about things differently. That's one thing. The other thing is leadership.
RSA talks.
Absolutely. The other thing, and you won't like this, Matthew, I'm sure, is we need more playmakers. We need more people who lead by example and don't go with the norm in government. So Michael Gove, what he did in his first few days in office, he brought the New Schools Network through, took a risk, went against procurement law, some people might say, sailed very close to the wind on that and a number of other issues, but got things through the system, got his revolution going. So more of that in government is probably necessary to lead by example so officials start to ease up across Whitehall and do more with SMEs. That would be great.
Very good. More TED Talks and more ministers breaking the law. Okay. Yes, there's a woman back there with her arm in there. And then we've got somebody here, and then we'll move on to big business.
Hi, thank you. I'm Fiona Matthews. We established a way of discovering people that Trevor was talking about, the everyday people who are doing practical things, often without money, and extraordinary innovation. And we've run our program in 3 different continents and different languages. And
who are the most inventive people in the world, then?
Well, they're actually everyday people, I think, just as you were saying, and they happen to be pretty happy. Often they're not paid, they just love their work, as Trevor said. And these people are called Earth Champions. The community nominate them themselves. We usually do it with the mayor or secretary of state of that city. We did one, the last one was in Hong Kong, and the secretary of state said on the day we launched at the press club, Fiona, I have to tell you, this is a business city. No one here is interested in sustainability or this kind of business. So in 8 weeks, you'll be lucky if you get 20 nominations. In 8 weeks, we had 248 nominations. And Sir Crispin Tickell chairs the global judging panel. But the thing is, I wanted to say to all of you that our experience is we do it from government, business, and everyday people, that the people who are motivated are passionate. And the great thing is that they're pretty unstoppable. Whether or not they find the money, they'll continue on. And I think that's the hope for all of us. You know, I think that we all have solutions. It's appropriate, it's local, and we're not applying it to them. We just give them a platform for their knowledge. So thank you.
Great.
It's
Brilliant.
great.
Thank you very much. Yeah, round of applause. And then, yeah.
Hi, I'm Natasha. So just 2 quick points.
Yeah.
You were saying about how you wanted women to contribute.
Yeah, we've had loads now, though.
Flipping point. You could have a woman on the panel too. Sure. But more importantly, picking up on Doug's point, you know, America has an amazing attitude, and if you fail there, they say, well done, you tried, get up and try again. And here, if you fail, it's like, well, you really should have been an accountant. And I wonder if the government can be responsible for trying to change that cultural attitude so that it's okay to fail, you know. And I think a lot about trying.
They've got lots of people who failed in the cabinet. Go on. Failure. What about failure? Do you think it's true? I mean, this is a commonly said thing. Doug, you know about this. Is it true that Americans like failure more than we do?
I definitely wouldn't phrase it like that.
No, but I mean, if they say entrepreneurs, you go to an interview and you say, oh, my first 2 businesses collapsed, and that's not a bad thing, whereas here it's kind of...
One of the first experiences I ever had cross-culturally on that issue was shortly after I moved here. I was at a dinner of a bunch of business angels, and a fellow came in and pitched his business. And it was a really interesting idea. And during the course of the questioning by the angels of the entrepreneur, somebody asked him, what was your background? And he hesitantly shared the fact that his last business had actually gone bankrupt. Now, the way this particular dinner was set up, he then left and we talked about him. And very quickly, a number of people said, well, the guy's gone bankrupt, I'm not sure we can trust him. And I was really quite startled, because literally my first thought had been, ooh, he's failed. Well, he's gotten that out of his system, hasn't he? Right. He's not going to let that happen twice. And so I quite cheerfully said, well, that's a ridiculous... I said, I can't say what I actually said because you're here, but using a series of adjectives that are pungent and short, I perhaps described my views on that subject was, I think you're all idiots, basically. And we then had a really unproductive conversation.
So we've got a lot of insights into your personality tonight.
I'm remarkably transparent. But I think that I've been here 11 years, and I think in fairness things have changed a lot, even in the time I've been here. And I think that though TV only reflects society, I still find it quite ironic that we hadn't yesterday as a nation have all watched Andy Murray succeeded, and then the next day be debating the value of elitism, the value of somebody putting well more than 10,000 hours into an obsession that leads to success. The fact of the matter is, Trevor, though I am happy for ordinary people to discover endless inventions, I do not want to decry the value of a hugely accomplished academic education. I don't agree with you that qualifications are a mistake. Qualifications are dead necessary for the latest advances in technology and innovation, and therefore don't tell me it's all about ordinary people. It's about people who really put huge amounts of effort in on an obsessive basis for tens of thousands of hours, and they're the ones who are going to change the future, and we should celebrate them the way we do.
Should we let Trevor come back?
Yeah. All right, I agree. Right.
All right, here we go.
Right. Do you know the name Mary Anderson?
Yeah, you told me before, Trevor.
Well, don't give it away.
All right, sorry.
Any of you know who Mary Anderson was?
Windscreen wipers.
She invented the windscreen wiper in about 1903. Now, students should know that. You know, everybody thinks to be an engineer, you have to be an oily rag, all right? Stephanie Quillick, ever heard of her? Have you?
No.
Well, she invented Kevlar. Huh? I mean, the armed forces, everybody has this armor-plated material.
Knowing who's done what and when they've done it is not necessarily the most important thing.
No, but the most important thing is that if she can do it, I can do it. And that's the way it should be. We should change the image. We are all inventors. This is what I said at the beginning of this thing. You're lucky if you come up with a good idea, but you're even better if you've got all the skills you need to bring into market.
I have to agree with Doug here, because you just don't have all the skills that you need. If you
yes,
want, there are some advances which you cannot have without going through many years of education.
No, but it's not what you know, it's who you know, and it's also what lawyer do you know.
That is absolutely
okay, right, I'm right now. Now, before it comes to blows, we're moving into our... now, if you got your hand up because you've got a really brilliant point... No, but hang on, you've got to wait for a moment, because you really put your hand up, so it's got to be a fantastic point. You know, really, it's got to be really good, this.
Okay, thank you. Just to say that obviously academic education is fantastic, but it's really important to remember that a bunch of the scientists from the 19th century in Britain who created the modern world did not go to university, and they just did it at home. That's so right. The main thing is the dedication is essential, but also you can do it on your own.
Can I say something to that? Sorry.
Briefly, yeah.
Dedication is absolutely instrumental, but the advance in science and technology and the level of know-how you need to do to develop new things, not in everything, but in many spheres of industry and technology, you cannot do without having learnt and gone through that process.
You do a Google search.
Right, okay, now. We're turning now, finally, to big business. Big business. Now, before you all kind of go, big business, remember that Shell are buying you a drink at the end of the session. So, you know, you want to temper your kind of anti-capitalism just for a while, you know. Anyway, so I want to know what big business, what more could... We heard before, they're sitting all that money, Doug, you know. Now, what do you think that big businesses could do more to foster enterprise innovation? You've rejected this kind of crude attack on the bank, but what could big businesses do more?
So banks and big businesses are not the same, but it's an interesting conflation. I think that big businesses suffer the same issue that Rohan addresses for the government. They are not entrepreneurial purchasers. One of the things in particular about large British corporations that I find challenging is they're very conservative in their willingness to work with small, young companies, even to their own self-interest. And it's a shame, because it's large businesses that offer the distribution networks and the platforms and the reach for small, innovative companies to get their products out to very large markets. And so usually it is, in fact, a collaboration between a small business and a large business that gives the small business the oomph to actually get out into large markets. And in other countries, whether it's the Mittelstadt in Germany or the entrepreneurial cultures in California, they both do a better job than we do here. And therefore, I think that there's a case to be made for large corporations in this country to get their act together.
Trevor, I'm coming to you in a second. Rohan, when I was, I did an event last week, funnily enough, about the SME IT target that you talked about earlier. And someone got up from an SME and said, did we know that the 25% target includes subcontracting from large companies, those large system integrators?
Same in America.
And he said, the idea that you are boosting innovation enterprise by letting us subcontract to large companies is laughable, because large companies don't buy in that kind of way. So are large companies just inimical to the idea of enterprise and innovation, or can the culture, their culture change too?
Do you know, I think the culture can change, and the change is being forced on them. And the reason for that, if you look at life sciences, for example, the reason that the big pharma companies are closing down sites like the Pfizer site at Sandwich and so on is not because they hate the good people of Sandwich, but because their in-house research and development hasn't been yielding the innovations and the patents and the intellectual property that they were hoping for. And so what all the pharma companies are doing is moving to a model of open innovation, where they're collaborating, they're buddying up with startups and venture capital and university researchers. And that model of open innovation in life sciences, actually you see right across the board. And the reason that, a big part of the reason I think Tech City has done well is because the large companies are willing to come in and invest a lot of money in incubation spaces in East London. It was in September 2010, I went to Silicon Valley and was pitching Eric Schmidt, who was then CEO of Google, this idea of Tech City. And I said, you know, it'd be great if you could do something to get behind East London. And he said, he turned to the other Google people in the room and said, well, how about we buy the Olympic Park? And they laughed nervously, and he was serious. And in the end, Google ended up creating a thing called the Google Campus, which is a 6-story building in East London that has one Google employee in a 6-story building. And each floor of the Google campus is handed over to a different incubator space, a different collaboration, shared workspace for startups. And the reason Google did that is they want to be close to the innovators, maybe to buy those companies, maybe to spot where innovation is coming from. And the same next door to the Google campus is a building called Central Working, which is a huge shared workspace sponsored by Barclays, an evil bank who aren't buying you drinks tonight for some reason. But the reason that companies like that, and the reason that Cisco and Intel and Vodafone and all these companies are in Tech City is because they want to be close to the startups, because they know that's where the innovation is coming from. So I think this is sort of being forced on them in a way that's actually quite healthy. And maybe it's taking longer to percolate to different bits of the economy. But we see with Tech City an amazing array of companies, from accounting firms to firms like Procter & Gamble and Unilever, coming and wanting to invest there because they want to be close to the startups. They want to be doing things with startups. That's an incredibly healthy and interesting change.
So, Alex, you've been a beneficiary of Shell's beneficence in winning this award. What do you think big businesses can do more? Do you think you will change yourself when your company gets to a certain size? Do you think you'll become a bureaucrat? You'll kind of lose your spark?
I certainly hope not. I hope when our business grows up that we have the ability to support fledgling ideas. It is all about ideas in the end. And the ideas have to germinate, and they need the ability to have that pot like Tech City. From my point of view, though, I see a lot of focus. Maybe this is a skewed point of view, but I see a lot of focus on software, startups, which is wonderful. There's a huge amount of innovation to do there. But let's not forget there is a mechanical world out there. There are things that need to be built, need to be designed. And I feel that's perhaps a little less support from big business for that kind of business. You physically need more space, you physically need machinery, you physically need a lot more hardware, which is often difficult to do in a small office incubator, for example.
Have you come across the makerspace movement, the kind of Fab Labs and all that?
Yes, I have.
Which the RSA is really involved in.
Absolutely brilliant.
Do people know about these? These are spaces where they have like 3D printers, laser cutters, stuff like that, where people come, like you, I guess, Trevor, it would have been a fantastic space for you when you were in the heart of your kind of inventing process.
Exactly. I mean,
so it's like a shared garden shed, really.
That's the next point I was going to make. It's never actually been easier to move into the hardware world.
Yeah.
And to have some direct support for that would be fantastic.
Yeah, but the thing is, it all comes down to the way you reward those people that come up with a good idea. You take a large corporation, they own all the intellectual property, right? It's theirs. So if you come up with a really bright idea, alas, you did it for us. We didn't do it for you. I mean, you know, somebody must have come up with a solution to this box of matches. Do we really need a rough surface on both sides? Someone in-house probably said, no, one side will do. Boom, boom. Doesn't sound very much, but that person should have received some sort of award, because you have to have something within a company to encourage people to come up with bright ideas, and they should be given a good prize. And, of course, you give the company terrific publicity if they make a big show of that deal.
All right, I'm going to ask, because we haven't done one of those kind of random audience polls that people tend to do at events like this, so I'm going to choose one. I do one now. I'm interested, those of you who think that there's nothing intrinsically about big business, which means that they can't be innovative and creative. I want you to put your hands up in a moment. Those who think there is something about business, which means in the end they can't really handle being innovative and creative. So those of you who think big businesses can be innovative and creative, put your hands up now. Those who think that they can't really, it's kind of 60-40 for big business. Okay, who wants to say something about what big businesses can do? Or maybe you're in a big business and it is innovative and there's somebody there. Fantastic. I'm going to take 2 or 3 points and we're going to finish, so make them short and sharp. And
okay.
Brilliant.
My name's Harjeet, and after 20 years in big business, I gave up. 10 years in a large corporation in the UK and 10 years in Hong Kong. I would say that big corporates don't want innovation and creativity because it's disruptive. They don't want loose cannons. They don't want mavericks. Big businesses want order, predictability. So the culture of big businesses just does not support innovation, despite what they say. And I'll give a very quick example. About 2 years ago, I took on a very small company to develop a system, an American company, and it was a big contract in Asia for them. It went brilliantly well. They were supportive. They broke the rules to please us. We got a great result. The company got bought out by IBM. In came the rules, the processes, the policies. Half the project got stalled, and it ended up being a mess.
Okay, thank you. Now, I've got 3 other people. I'm taking those 3 and no other 3. I know who they are. Okay, starting with you.
I think just a point that jumped out at me when we had the Shell slide at the start, that actually they say they've given sort of 2.25 million over the last few years, when actually their profits are 9 billion a quarter. Ooh. So you kind of think, well, actually these big companies, it's almost lip service. It's almost just they're throwing a little bit of money at it to keep people happy and to get their brand up. And I think we need to take this another level. Because I recently left a construction company because I had ideas. I was the construction industry is struggling in a big way, but they just don't want to change. They've had 20 years of great growth, and to go in and come up with ideas, I was shunned. My middle manager was just petrified of a new idea coming forward. So I think all this stuff is great, but I think the government, big business, everyone, it needs ratcheted up so many more levels before it's even going to start to make a dent in the medium businesses, in the businesses that are the heart of the UK.
Brilliant. Actually, you look a little bit like Andy Murray. So have you been getting a lot of Andy Murray stuff today? Well done, Andy. Okay, there's someone in the gods. Is there a microphone up there? There is, okay.
2 people at the top.
2 of you, okay, right, go on. Sorry, I couldn't see you earlier.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So I'm Jeremy Watson from Arup, the engineering consultancy. I've got 2 examples, I think, which are upbeat and positive. One is that Arup is sponsoring 55 doctoral students. We encourage innovation. We've got an open jam system on our intranet whereby people have ideas every week, and we adjudicate and we reward those people. We take some of those ideas forward. The previous one was with BOC, the gases company, which is now no longer in quite the form it was before, but we had an innovation group. We rewarded people, so Trevor will be pleased. We gave awards for patents that were filed, and £80 million a year of new business was formed from an existing large company for work we did in that way by encouraging innovation in groups. Thank you.
Thank you, very good. Yeah. And then the other person up there, and then...
Matthew, I had a more general point, which I'll leave to the end if we have time. It's about...
We are at the end.
We are at the end.
We don't have time.
Well, I think we need to distinguish invention and innovation, and there are social forces which shape whether innovations get taken up, and we need to understand those better. But a more general thing, the examples that were given against Britain were places like Frankfurt, Shanghai, Santa Clara, Bangalore, and so on. And I think if you look at the countries those cities are in, they're countries which have a sense of the future and a sense of a need to increase growth and serve their citizens in different ways. And Britain, in the time of the seed drill, the steam engine, and the telephone, the examples that were given in the blurb, had that sensibility as well. And I think we need to recapture that sensibility of having a positive vision of the future and a desire to increase the quality of life of ordinary people. And I don't think we have that at the moment. So I think for politicians and business leaders, I think if we could achieve that, we would raise the boat for anybody interested in inventing and innovating.
Okay, brilliant. And then finally. Yep.
Woman finished off. So I wanted to say that big business is desperate to get these skills of innovation, entrepreneurship into their companies. And I'm an entrepreneur who is providing those skills to big business. And leadership structures, mindset of leaders, and the culture of companies needs to change in big business. And that's what's next for that.
Brilliant. Okay, now I'm going to ask the panel. You've got to say yes, no, or maybe. Do you think that Britain can once again be a great country for inventors and innovation? Trevor?
Yes, provided we do it properly.
Okay, very good. Doug?
Of course.
Of course. Rohan?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Alex, can you have another superlative?
Without doubt.
Without doubt. You can see what an original group they are. Okay, so look, it's been absolutely fantastic debate. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you for those of you who've been watching us online. I want to thank Intelligence Squared for organising the event. I want to thank Shell for supporting the event. And if you go into the library after the event, you can get a glass of wine for Shell and discuss the vagaries of big business and how much you are opposed to capitalism over your second or third glass of wine. Please fill in the feedback form, especially if there's a thing for the chair. I don't know if there is, but, you know, times are hard. Can I just ask you to join me in thanking our fantastic panel, Rohan, Alex, Trevor, and Doug.